Hey, Bulls and Bears, I am back. You're watching Bull, Boom, Bear, Bust. My name is JJ. It is Friday, April 21st, 2023, and we've got a lot of excellent news to get into. I said good news in my last report. Some of you said, "What good news? This is all bad news." No, this is good news. Knowing the situation, knowing what's happening, even if it's not something that's a rosy picture for a lot of the population, but knowing what's happening is good. It's good to know what's happening. So if it was wrong information or not true, then it wouldn't be good. But knowing the truth is good. Nothing wrong with knowing the truth, right? So here is what's happening now with the banks and with precious metals. I want to tie these together because it's so important. We have the panic, of course, in the banks. I think everybody knows, even casual observers of financial news know what's going on with the banks. And a big part of the rush to take money out of these banks is into hard assets and precious metals. And I've heard from a source, multiple sources that we'll talk about here in just a few minutes, that the demand for precious metals right now, especially silver, because it's so much lower cost than gold, the demand is skyrocketing right now. We also see outflows just from smaller and regional banks because of the perceived risk that these smaller and regional banks are not going to be rescued, or that FDIC is not going to cover all those depositors. We see outflows because of that. Now, we did see a pause in the last couple of weeks, and my theory on that was partly because the panic subsided just a little bit, but because of tax returns, people get direct deposits into their checking accounts. But wait till you see what happened here just recently. That's going to further underpin, the understanding here that the panic has not stopped. It's actually continuing. We're seeing more outflows, right? So we're going to talk about that also in just a couple minutes here. But first of all, yeah, most people get their taxes now direct deposit instead of just a check in the mail. People that do get tax returns, if you made gains in the markets, or have some other sort of business that you didn't already prepay taxes on or have it directly taken out of your check, then you're likely going to be paying in. But a lot of people get direct deposits. So we saw the uptick or increase in deposits over the past couple weeks prior to this last week. And we saw big outflows ever since the banking crisis happened in mid-March. But then the last couple weeks prior to last week was increasing deposits, right? So people said, "Oh, the panic's over." It's not over. The increase or the uptick, I think, was direct deposits for people's tax returns. But what's happened since then, this past week, outflows have resumed. So my theory on that is that people got their direct deposit, but then maybe left it in there a week or two and actually started taking it out again. And here's an article that talks about this here. U.S. bank deposits resume outflows. Led by large institutions, small bank loan growth slumped. And I'm looking at a chart here. Bank deposits unexpectedly resumed their free fall. So we saw a slight uptick starting 3 weeks ago, and then 2 weeks ago, that week was another uptick. So deposits growing, but now last week, another big drop. So the panic isn't over. Yes, a lot of the outflows are people going to the larger institutions because of what Janet Yellen said. She said, if you're in a smaller or regional bank, you may not be covered because you're not systemically important enough. You're not big enough. Basically, you're not too big to fail. So depositors, that didn't give them a lot of confidence. Banks didn't give them a lot of confidence. So we see this big credit crunch happening right now. So a lot of things happening all at once here. But another big part of this is not just people taking their money out and going to these bigger banks that they feel safer at, the too big to fails, the mega banks, is now into precious metals. I've got a couple gold dealers that in constant contact with. And I also heard a recent interview here out of Andy Scheckman, I believe from, is it Miles Franklin? He gave out a silver warning. The silver supply is drying up. The silver supply is drying up. So I wouldn't hesitate to get into metals right now. One of the ways that I've done it here recently is through my 401k. Of course, you all know my sponsor. Played them in my last report. If you don't know who that is, just go back and watch the report right before this one. And I think that's an excellent way to move into precious metals right now, especially because you're going to be penalized if you take money out of your 401k, right? This is a way to roll it over into in my opinion, a more safe asset here, precious metals, even silver, without being penalized for taking your money out of your retirement early. So people saying, that there's no solutions on this channel, that this is all just complaining or pinpointing the problems. You're not listening. There's definitely ways to maneuver this and make a lot of money. And again, it's my opinion that silver is going to skyrocket. I'm thinking double digits here within a year. Just my opinion on it. And once the trading manipulation gets squashed, so to speak, I think we're going to see triple digit silver. I'm thinking thousands of dollars. And it's likely not going to be until the Fed pivots and drops rates and goes into the next phase of QE infinity. And I think that's going to be the moonshot for metals, especially silver, because silver is even more undervalued right now than I think a lot of other precious metals. Because we saw what the all-time high in the $50 range back in the 80s. Look at all the money that was printed and created since then. So that's why I think it's going to be the moonshot for silver once the suppression ends and once the panic really kicks into second gear for people looking for a safe haven when they see what's happening still with the bank. And at the same time as all this banking fiasco / panic that's happening, we've got massive destruction of the dollar. We've got more nations coming on board with the anti-dollar or outside the dollar trades with other nations. When you look at all the nations involved in this, it's more than half the world's population. When you look at all the big nations here involved, India and China, just those two together are massive. And we look at the other countries now coming on board, it's more than half the world's population. So big things happening. Let me just put out here what Greg Manarino said. Gregory Manarino, huge YouTube channel, way bigger than mine. So I check in with him every once in a while. Here's his words in one of his recent videos. Bye-bye dollar. The U.S. dollar's purchasing power just hit an all-time low and going lower. Couldn't agree more with him. But let's get into some other news here. More layoffs. And I still have people emailing me telling me that I'm wrong, that everything's fine. There's a nice meme for that. Everything's fine. Have you guys seen that one? The house is on fire, but everything's fine because we're just going to sit here and look at our coffee cup. Huge layoffs. Latest announcement here is Lyft, the alternate to Uber. Lyft to cut at least 1,200 jobs, 1,200 jobs in new round of layoffs to reduce costs. All right. So one of the excuses that we see with these layoffs is, everybody's shopping online. But then we saw Amazon with huge layoffs, and people couldn't say that anymore. You can't say people are shopping online to get rides as far as like not doing things in the real world or doing things digitally. Well, Lyft layoffs, I guess everything's fine, but people no longer need taxis. Have people learned how to fly? No. The thing is, business has slowed down. People aren't traveling as much. People are cutting back on discretionary spending. And Uber, Lyft, these ride companies are seeing a lot less business. And moreover, on the topic of tightening credit, what's being called the credit crunch, with banks now going into survival mode, an article today out of Bloomberg, here's the headline: U.S. corporate credit crunch means bankruptcies and rising defaults. There are worrisome signs of corporate distress in the wake of the banking crisis, raising the specter that a pullback in lending will drag down the economy. Folks, we're just getting started here, and this is going to be a nice opportunity for people that are ahead of a curve here, that could see a way around being behind the 8 ball. So this is going to be a good opportunity, right? So again, back to what I said at the beginning, this is good news to know what's happening, to see areas of opportunity. And if you can't see the areas of opportunity now, you're not really looking, in my opinion. Also, let's jump into car repossessions for just a minute here. I'm seeing more strange stories of car repossessions and crazy things happening, right? There was a shooting a few weeks ago. Somebody ran up to the tow truck driver and didn't end up well. Let's put it that way. Another story that I think I talked about maybe 2 weeks ago, where a tow truck driver was taking somebody's car away, and it came off the tow truck and went into the people's living room. So a very bad situation for that family. One, losing their car, but two, their house had to be fixed now. I hope they had home insurance. Here's another one. Lawsuit here. Repo man took woman's car away with her in it. Took her car away with her in it. And she wasn't just sleeping in it. It was a resisting type of thing where she refused to get out of her car. Also, I think a lot of you might have heard the news about the Home Depot employee tried to stop somebody from shoplifting and didn't end up well. Didn't end up being a good day at work for that person. Very, very sad story. And we're going to see more stories like this as the economy deteriorates. More things like this happening, more crazy stories, more sad tragedies happening out there. And it's becoming more and more dangerous just to interact with the general public with the levels of financial anxiety, debt, depression. People are snapping. They're losing it. They're trying to take stuff that's not theirs now, and they're being more brazen about it. And that's what happens when the economy is collapsing, and it is collapsing. But you could say everything's fine again and not believe it. But this is all real news, folks. And I don't take joy in reporting this, but I do take joy in knowing that you're on top of the news. You're on top of the financial situation. You're going to be able to take advantage of it. So, let's keep on top of this. Let's stay ahead of the curve. One more news story before we get out of here today. Carvana, here's a company where their stock dropped by over 90%. They're still on life support mode as far as I can see. Bloomberg, Carvana preps $479 million bond backed by subprime auto loans. It's going to be interesting to see who or if anyone buys this bond from Carvana. Subprime auto loans. They're saying they're selling it to pay down debt. Looks to me like they're in survival mode. They paid a lot of money for these cars. Car prices stopped going up and in fact declined a little bit, since the peak that we saw last summer. And it's going to be interesting to watch Carvana if they're going to survive this. But another bond sale to get rid of some of these loans off of their books. Will you be purchasing any of these bonds? I doubt it. It's not the average person. If anybody purchases it, it's probably going to be a mega hedge fund or a central bank. That's what I think. Would be the last buyer of last resort for these types of investments. So, all right, folks, we're going to wrap this one up here. What do you guys think about the crazy vehicle repossession stories that are out? What do you think about the resumption of the outflows from the banks? The panic isn't over. I put a report out last week saying that the banking crisis has not been solved. Obviously, people agree with me because we're seeing outflows now resume from these banks and a lot of them into hard assets, precious metals. So you know what to do. Keep stacking, everybody. Bye for now. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a chest bump. I did work out earlier. You ready? There you go. Back to my push-up regimen. Weather's getting warmer. I'm back in the workout mood. Let's get healthy financially and physically, everybody. Big love. Keep stacking. Bye for now. Peace.